And I want to welcome you. Hopefully we want to make research data collection and data analysis compatible. I'm Glenda Sharp, and I have a co-presenter that is Jennifer Kreisman. And so welcome. And I want, so I'm going to just start going through the slides. So whether you're an administrator or a data collection system or an individual responsible for planning and designing a data collection project, you are, or you're the end user of the data collected, in the end, everyone suffers if all data you've gathered is incompatible with the tools you must use for analysis. The path to success is finding an adept data collection infrastructure that promotes both facile research, project development, and analysis. So, how to choose a data collection tool and methodology that are both resonant and functional. Ask questions. Will participants be consented to participate? What are security protocols that are built into the system you're using? Are there security protections for data storage, collection, and analysis, or both locally or remotely? Are the and so will the data acquisition be local or indirect, and will the data collected via surveys be taken by participant or both locally and remotely? Can an API be used for both data entry and export? And will the data acquisition be done in a longitudinal fashion? Of course, early on, there were just paper forms. Then there were computers and research coordinators sitting at a desk typing into a text document or Excel. Then came the internet, and research subjects could reply to emails with answers relevant to relevant research questions. Then there was SurveyMonkey, and then Qualtrics. Both tools are commercial products and provide wonderfully easy to use survey creation and distribution tools for collecting data and some analytic tools. Not so wonderful for securely storing PHI and PII, longitudinal data collection and multi-site studies, direct data entry. So if you're doing all these things at once, direct data entry, interviews, API input, they're not the best. And then there's REDCap. And so the reason why REDCap was created was they firmly believed that nobody could know the research as well as the researcher. So user-friendly web-based interface was introduced to reach the flexible features and researcher control project development. REDCap is a secure web platform for building and managing online databases, surveys. REDCap streamlined processes for rapidly creating and designing projects, offers a vast array of features to be tailored for virtually all collection strategies. REDCap provides it's facile data collection, extraction, and analysis tools. So REDCap provides automated export procedures for seamless data downloads to Excel and common statistical packages, SPSS, SAS, Stata, and R, as well as built-in project calendar, a scheduling module, and reporting tools that include some design functionality. And they also it also uses things such as branching logic, file uploading, and calculated fields. Initially, it was developed at Vanderbilt under a grant from the NIH. It is now supported by a consortium with over 6,000 institutional members. And you can find out more about REDCap Consortium at the URL here. And it's projectredcap.org and about. And another good thing about web access is it's secure 24-hour web access. So it allows you to build online surveys and databases quickly and securely, working from within your browser. Create and design your project using a secure login from any device. Password is going to be necessary, and each institution controls who has access to their system and the level of security that's provided. So it's adaptable to both simple and complex data collection projects. Success relies on familiarity with the many design features, and there are a lot. And I'm going to cover a few of them, but not in total. So it's fast and flexible. You can go from project to creation, starting data collection in less than 1 day. But I will emphasize that you should learn the features of REDCap first. It's important that you know those and the limitations and all the various features. So the customizations and changes are possible even when your project is in production, even after data collection has begun. However, if you want to do a change to your production project, it will go through an admin who will check it to see, and there's a feature that you can look at your own that will check it to see if you're going to lose or change the meaning of your data when you make those changes. There's advanced instrument design features, auto validation, calculated fields. Auto validation means that it's going to check to see if you've answered the appropriate questions. Calculated fields, file uploading, branching and skip logic, and survey stop action. So collect online or in person via surveys or using the API feature, and even offline. You can even collect your data offline using the REDCap mobile app. So the data quality feature is a whole set of instructions that will run against your collected data and use field validation, branching, skip logic, and missing data codes to improve and protect data quality during data entry. Open data queries to automatically identify and resolve discrepancies and other issues in real time. You have very diverse and flexible survey distribution objects or options. You can use a list of email addresses or phone numbers and for your survey respondents, and automatically contact them with personalized messages and track who has responded. Now, anonymous surveys, you don't track who's been responding. You can create a simple lead for an anonymous survey for mass email mailings to post on a website or print on a flyer. During COVID, we've discovered that posting on a web your link to your anonymous thing and offering a $5 card is not a good idea, and so there have to be security features for any survey links. You can connect to other resources. You can use built-in features, the API, automatic in application programmer interface, to move data to or from your project. You can build your own custom software development features to connect your project to other systems. There's offline data collection. That's the mobile app, and mobile app has its own issues in terms of data connectivity from distant remote places. File repository. we all want to make sure the files we send that may have data that we don't want anybody else to see is so you can upload data, you can upload files and securely store them. You can share them if the person has access to your project. You can give them access to that file storage and they can actually look at the files. And then there's that's the file repository feature. Also, you have people who aren't REDCap users, but you may want to send them secure data. And there is something called the send it tool, which sends them a notice and a password, and they have to go back and forth to get the file. But they can download the file, and it only stays stored for a specified length of time. You can connect other resources using built-in API, move data to or from your project. And then, so in the end, after you've collected your data or mid-collection, you may want to see what's happening. So you can make custom reports. You can use customized analysis exports out of the system into so in those go into SAS, Stata, or SPSS, Microsoft Excel, CSV data, or even a PDF. And you get to design using branching, using logic to say what you're selecting on your report. It just doesn't dump the whole thing. Then there's database triggers and alerts, and those are really fun and complex and important, because maybe you're collecting data from people that you're doing, say, site data. And you want to find if somebody reports that they're feeling suicidal, you may want to be notified of that. So you can have alerts sent, or for any other reason. If you're trying to collect a lot of things about blue and they talk about orange, you can send an alert saying that that's the case. You should have a clear understanding of your expected destination. And the questions you should answer early in the project's development: what are the expected destinations? Will the data be delivered either raw or post-analysis? And do you have a clear guidance on handling the distribution of your PHI, PII? Hopefully everybody knows what PHI is, personal health information, PII is personally identifiable information, and they're not exactly the same. And what happens if there's one of the features in REDCap is you can, if you have like PHQ-9 or whatever, where you have a tendency to score your project, there's automatic scoring that can be conducted, and that field can be on the same instrument but hidden. And when that instrument is saved, the scoring is done, and you can be notified of somebody who scores in a level that's of concern or out of range or something. And does any of the data require an automated alert to be sent? It may. It may. Which analysis tools may be used locally or at destination? Will an individual, so understand that. And will an individual or team do the analysis if data has triggered an alert? So the alerts may go to your CRC or may go to the PI. It could go to any number of people. And again, Excel, SPSS, R, Stata, committee analysis. You may export the data and have a committee going over it, or some combination. Okay. The data destinations. This is important. When you're designing your project, or whether you are just looking at, or whether you know that it's going to be there, or where you're going to send it, how you're going to send it, what sort of analysis tools you might use. Where will it be landing? NIH, CDC, a UC institution, healthcare institutions, other government institutions, students, staff, faculty, or the community at large. And it's important when you're doing your design to understand what those destinations are when you're creating reports to create the report that fits the destination. And research project goals. Of course, each research project that meets its goals should inspire all those that have worked to make it succeed or successful. If they're inspired, they'll become engaged, and they will devote even more insight and energy into their next project. This will make the movement across the stages of a project more facile and increase individual and institutional trust and willingness to engage in additional research. And so there's two things here. I would like to have questions. And our QR code, you can take a picture of that and it will send you to one of REDCap's surveys. And one that I put together is really simple, and it will allow you to download this whole slide deck because I fumbled through it, I'm sure. And also, if you provide your name and an email address, you will be able to send an email to us or send a question to us, which we will answer. Questions?
But no, we're trying to figure out how to triage questions. So give us a second.
Okay, are there a lot of questions? Hopefully, I haven't. Well, there we go. No questions? Nobody's asking questions in the chat? Did I go too fast? So what is it?
Glenda, I have a question.
Okay.
And you're gonna have to repeat this so people online can hear. You have dealt with researchers building for the better part of the decade on this platform, building systems and then getting to the point of analysis and publication. What are some of either the pitfalls or the success stories that you see for people when they get to the point of not the data collection, but the point of analysis?
At the point of analysis, when you export the data from REDCap, if it's a longitudinal study, or if it has digital data access groups, which silo pieces of the data in the project, when it's exported, it will come. Each section will have its own line if you're exporting it into Excel, and that can be very problematic. And people will say, well, why can't you level it out? And you have to, if you're using the same instrument, and you can use the same instrument in each event within a longitudinal survey. And if you have to point out that you're going to have to either pick a specific event to pull your analysis from and include single lines rather than trying to collate all the lines into what's the analysis package that's the worst with that?
SAS struggles.
Yeah, SAS struggles with that.
So it sounds like is data shaping the phrase that you might
data shaping is a good
that's something you would say generalized beyond REDCap.
Yeah, yes, it does. And also, like I said in the first part of the talk, it is really important that you develop like a test case for what you're expecting to collect. Export and collect false data and export it and see, whoa, does this fit my analysis needs? Also, REDCap has a feature of checkboxes. And checkboxes, every time that instrument is used, it produces a lot of zeros for that instrument. And those are the unchecked. If it's checked, it goes to 1. But since checkboxes, you can have multiple answers. it can confuse people, and each checkbox has its own column in an Excel file. And that's confusing to a lot of people. People have problems with yes, no. Because sometimes we have a yes, no field. Yeses are always 1, no's are always 0. But some scoring instruments, want it to change depending on what the question is.
Right.
And so you have to account for that. You have to design for that for scoring. Let's see. Other features are people may have multiple email addresses and you're trying to send surveys.
So going back to the data analysis
Yeah.
part of it, it seems what I think, like, if I try to abstract that out, it seems like part of what implicitly you're saying is, like, almost independently of the platform, it's sort of pushing researchers to think about their analysis plan even before they start planning their data collection.
Right.
And they know that they should do that, but you're saying, like, build a case study, take it through what you're trying to do, prove that it'll land in the analysis plan successfully before you even go live.
Absolutely. So, and should I repeat what you just?
Yes.
Yes. So my people here just said that you should really carefully consider what your analysis is going to look like, what you need for analysis before you start. Then create a test case. Again, create a test case that shows what has been collected and distribute that. And let's see. And ask a question. Yeah.
I don't know.
I still have.
That's okay. So we were anticipating, I think we've either lost Jen or she's on.
She's on.
Yeah, okay. Because I feel like she wanted to talk about the compliance layer.
Yeah.
And how that connects with analysis as well.
Yeah.
Hey folks, this is Jennifer. I'm on the
you
call.
are.
Yay.
Yeah, it looks like the presenters have a different view than those that are joining as guests.
Yeah.
But thank you, Glenda, for giving such a detailed presentation on the various features of REDCap and how it can help you. It forces you to think about how you're collecting your data and putting it in a format that would make it much easier to ingest into any of the different products you might use to analyze it. I think the things that Remy is talking about is just that use of PHI within REDCap and understanding kind of some of the guidelines or policies that the institution might have for storing REDCap, especially as we start to leverage the electronic medical record as the source of data. And I think the key point that I was hoping to bring up is that, you know, REDCap is a great tool to use and perhaps store PHI as you're enrolling and consenting patients. But if your IRB has given you a waiver of consent, it wouldn't be prudent to pull PHI from the electronic medical record into REDCap without that consent. And so just kind of thinking all of the different, as the world begins to change and we aren't relying on just prospective studies, but are leveraging the electronic medical record in order to conduct our research and evaluate our study aims, that we want to make sure that we're using best practices and really understand what each of our universities' policies are as we get access to data that might have been stored as a part of their health record.
Totally agree. Also, I think in general, any study that has to go before an IRB should have a clear understanding of what the consent process is, how it should be stored, and it's like for consent, it's interesting because depending on where your study is being conducted, GDPR says they can take your data anytime they want. And we don't have that rule here in the US. But it's important to understand that if you have people doing international studies. More, Jennifer, please.
I think like the other things I think about in terms of making your data ready for analysis, REDCap, really the underlying layer is REDCap continues to adapt to meet the needs of the user. And that's one of the reasons why I promote REDCap, because it really is looking at through the lens of a researcher. And so one of the things that REDCap enables is collecting what we would typically call a relational data. So this is where you might have many instances for a particular patient. So whether it be labs or encounters or immunizations, et cetera. And it's creating the tools that allows you to then export that data and then reconfigure it for your analyses. So while some studies, if it was somewhat prospective, you might start collecting that data as you would consider it as a defined variable in your analysis, or at least feel forced to, because the data would be very flat. But REDCap has these tools that can then let you collect, each of their labs over the course of their visits. And then perhaps you're then tasked with identifying the variable that you think would contribute to whatever you're studying. So it might be the most recent or the last or the highest or the lowest value. And so REDCap's creating these tools to kind of let you export that data in their more inherent format. So like if a form is collecting repeated measures on a certain domain, it'll allow you to kind of export that as a separate table versus, extracting all of the data at once, which would then come out as a flat file. And to kind of a user who's not been using REDCap for a long time, it might seem difficult to then parse that data out as to help you then define whatever covariates you want to create for your analysis.
We do have a question in chat. Erin, do you want to read it?
Yeah, you may have to repeat this, but does REDCap allow you to create public interactive data dashboards?
Repeat the question.
Okay, yeah, does REDCap allow you to create public interactive dashboards?
Data dashboard.
It allows you to create public dashboards that we don't use in our instance. We control them. But it does allow public dashboards. I don't think they're interactive.
By interactive, do they mean that they'd want to click on something and be able to download data? I don't know if the person who asked that question. Or interactive as slicing the data in different ways or filtering it so that you can look at distributions by different groups.
I don't think the public dashboards allow you to do that, but users can create their own reports, but it's not a publicly accessible. Say demo?
Say Tableau.
Oh, it's Tableau. Say Tableau.
Yeah.
Because it can feed out to Tableau.
Yeah.
Well, we might be able to save 7 minutes of the attendees' time if there aren't any more questions.
Any more questions? Anybody here in the room? Okay. thank you all for coming, and I'm sorry that I was so awkward to begin with. And just,
I see one question. Does it say, does REDCap allow your TI create public interactive data dashboards? Is it answered?
yeah, we answered that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Jen. Thank you.